Now we're going to go live from California. Good morning, Mr. Savlowitz, and thank you for being with us early this morning.
Good morning. Can you guys hear me? Hello?
Yes, sir.
You can hear me. Okay, good. And then final test here. Welcome, everybody. I just want to make sure you can see my screen. So let's. Okay, so you should see some flashing numbers on your screen. This is an eye test. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
Okay, great. All right, let's begin. Thank you. So again, thank you very much for inviting me to this wonderful webinar. Thank you to Swiss Education Group, SHMS, of course, World of Hospitality, I Meet Hotel, and of course, a special thanks to Ludwig as well, as I remove all these Zoom controls off my screen because it's hard for me to actually see anything. Okay. So 20 minutes, analytics and hospitality. This is a tall order. And I think the metaphor here is drinking out of a fire hose. I crafted 20 different types of hospitality analytics that will add value to just about any service-based entity you can think of. Just quickly about who I am and the company I run. Again, CEO, founder of Competitive Analytics. I'm also a professor of predictive analytics at UCI Irvine, visiting professor at SEG. If I had to describe myself, I guess I'm a provocateur, someone who loves to debate and argue, and then someone who probably could be classified as a bricoleur. Very quickly, our office in Newport Beach, we're headed in California. And just a very quick little tour about who we are. We're a full service analytics company covering all data and analytics services, partners to some of the best in class software companies, and our clients are arrayed in just about every industry you can imagine, to Fortune 500 companies all the way down to the smallest of SMBs. We have a very different and unique approach. And if I had to sum up everything about what we do in a mantra, it would be starting with the Latin phrase Supplier Analytics, which translated means dare to know. A lot of academic institutions have this. After a few years, I thought there was something grossly missing, and I inverted these words to discover kind of our true vision, which is really how to break rules, how to innovate, which is a very key theme to doing a good job with data and analytics. So let's talk about the current state of analytics, okay? First, there's some very, very good news, right? Companies, based on a survey by MIT and IBM, top performing organizations are 5 times more likely to be using analytics versus low performance. So that's obviously the good news. But there is a host of bad news. 95% of businesses only use 5% of the value of their own data. Furthermore, only 7% of organizations really truly track the indicators that actually drive their business. And a recent Accenture report talks about the fact that only 24% of their employees are actually literate about using data. Now, specifically though, one of the key areas of analytics is predictive analytics. It is literally ranked #1 as far as all the different types of analytics out there. And this is just an analytical chart on analytics, if you will, where you can see predictive analytics is the highest usage of analytics that companies are planning to use for the next 3 years and thereafter. So to sum up, the good news is that analytics is being used more and more by companies, especially in hospitality, and we're going to get to that in a moment. But predictive analytics specifically is being used in just about every single field you can imagine. So now we're going to talk about, in a very quick way, the 20 types of analytics, hospitality analytics. And this is sort of, again, the metaphorical drinking through the fire hose. So I'm going to try to go as quickly but as clearly as possible. So the first one is guest analytics, right? And this is deciphering guest preferences, demographics, patterns of behavior, et cetera, et cetera. Very, very important as an obvious point. But it's more than just deciding or understanding that a guest likes a cheeseburger versus an apple, all right? It's really about understanding all the choices that are available and what preferences your guests do like and will like, okay? And it's not just about products or tangible things. It's obviously about services, about the experiences, memories, and moments. Right now, a lot of companies put a lot of effort into this area with demographics. And yes, it's a very valuable way of understanding the data of guests, right? I mean, if I look at a simple demographic here of a male born in 1948, raised in the UK, married twice, lives in a castle, very wealthy and very famous, you think probably of the demographic that aligns with Prince Charles. However, guests are way more than just the data, specifically the demographic data, right? There's persona and psychometrics and behavior. So let's take a look at another individual that has the exact same demographics as Prince Charles, right? Probably a quite different type of guest that would have different preferences. Number 2, supplier analytics, right? This is selecting an optimized team of vendors. What does that mean? It means all the products, all the services that a hotel or hospitality entity provides, from guest amenities, expendables, essentials, loan items. These are items that bear the fruit of understanding the data behind them. Now, the most important amenity I can possibly think of is premium coffee. Every time I go to a hotel, I love their coffee. Number 3, competitive intelligence. Okay, this is a systematic collection of data and analytics from many, many sources. And it's not just the primary sources, there's secondary, tertiary, analog, substitute competitive forces. And when I talk about analog and substitute competitive forces, this broadens the horizon of what most people think of as competitive intelligence. For instance, if you're Hyatt and you're only thinking of Marriott, it's very short-sighted. You need to be starting to think about Airbnb, right? And what a disruptive force they've been in the industry, right? And understanding how Airbnb guests are different than hotel guests, yet are within the same field of data. Number 4, competitive product segmentation. This is essentially competitive landscaping and competitive mapping, right? It's about understanding the potentially different value adds of not just your portfolio, but the property, the specific room, the feature, the service, et cetera, et cetera. All right. I mean, here's an example of automobiles in a simple way, where you got luxury versus economy and family automobiles versus 2-seaters, and how you can segment companies and products thereof. You can even do this with snacks. The objective here and the message is that understanding the competitive landscape is critical, and doing this through data and analytics in a hospitality context is pretty critical. So understanding the entire landscape of the service industry is quite important. Number 5, dynamic price optimization. Okay, this is tracking real-time booking data and implementing agile pricing tactics and strategies. Okay, now, obviously, if I had way more time, I talk about econometrics and price optimization, but enough to say that it's very important for any hospitality entity to really understand their costs and their revenues in a very nuanced manner to understand how to optimize. This is actually an example of a live client dashboard that does exactly that. So all that boring stuff that you learned in economics, macroeconomics and microeconomics is actually used and should be used in the hospitality industry. Number 6, promotion analytics, right? This is your discounts, your premiums, offers, tailor-made packages. They include just about anything in which a discount is offered to a guest, and then analyzing why you're doing it, right? Does it bring value to the guest and to the portfolio? Number 7, channel mix optimization. Okay, this is, again, analyzing bookings in the context of, say, OTA, direct bookings website, word of mouth, any type of channel that could be analyzed. The example here is, at the end of the day, you want to understand the proportions of how you're spending your money on the channel mix. Marketing strategy optimization is all about, again, sort of an optimization of building awareness and all the different modes. In this case, in today's world, a lot of that has to do with social media optimization. Number 9, what if demand forecasting. Of course, I'm a bit biased about this one since it deals with predictive analytics, but the simple way to describe this is anticipating demand by customer type, product, substitute, room, services, et cetera, et cetera. And this is, again, something very critical to understand your business and to evolve. This, again, is another live example of a what-if forecast dashboard that looks 5 years out of a company's revenue growth. Trend forecasting is another important part of the hospitality analytics ecoscape, if you will. It's understanding the tastes, preferences, and the SWOT, the strength, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats of all the dimensions of your business. Now, just as a wild example here, understanding the trend in chocolate chip cookies might or might not be something that might attach to some type of service or amenity that you're thinking about. And understanding the tastes and preferences of chocolate chip cookies in a data and analytics way is pretty critical. And understanding the historical trends and perhaps the forecast thereof. Number 11, occupancy optimization. This is obviously targeting a profit-driven level of occupancy versus supply, inventory, and a lot of other demand forecasting dimensions. The only thing I can add here is that I can add quite a lot, but just based on the time and constraints here, the one point I wanted to get across is that most people have this operational goal of 100% occupancy. And is this correct? And to me, it is a myth. It is not something that should be strived for as an end-all, be-all goal. And that is because economics and optimization algorithms will provide evidence that this is not the case, that there is some occupancy level, and this changes obviously dynamically through the year, if not day by day, on what your occupancy level should be based on a host of all cost and revenue drivers. And typically it's not 100%. Number 12, cost minimization. So this is a field that gets a lot of controversy because there are some CEOs and leaders that believe that this is where you grow your bottom line. And that's obviously not something that should be emphasized in a vacuum. That cost minimization is something that's important and should be looked at, but not by forfeiting future comfort, future benefits of the guests, because that actually drives future revenue as well. So it is a balance, but it is something that needs to be looked at. Again, you can think of it as cost analysis versus quality, efficiency, and revenue growth. HR and people analytics is another fast and popular growing field within analytics, and especially hospitality analytics. It's essentially the data behind hiring, firing, promoting, compensating, providing bonuses, scheduling, evolving your employees' growth, et cetera, et cetera. Number 14, amenity service feature optimization. This is what we call price value optimization. This deserves probably 5 hours to talk about, but let me just explain with a couple of slides what I mean. Essentially, price is what a guest pays, and value is what a guest gets. Okay, just paraphrasing Warren Buffett. And so we literally built a model that looks at this, where we look at every single value dimension and value component that possibly could exist at an apartment, a hotel, a residential home, what have you, right? And then we looked at each of these as a data point. And if you plotted just those with, say, one dimension, square footage, if you see on the bottom of the chart there, you're going to get a very low correlation. No matter how you conduct your analytics, whether you're driving linear relationships, exponential, polynomial, it's probably specious at best. But if you use a value versus price, where that bottom axis, the x-axis, is a consolidation, a composite of many, many different value dimensions, square footage being one of them, then you get a very tight correlation. And the point here is that the buyer, the guest, the hotel guest, really feels and perceives this value. And so the job of the analytics guy or girl at the hospitality company is to try to understand the relationship between dollars and value. And value could be not just specific value, but perceived value. Number 15, finance and accounting. Probably what you can consider maybe the most esoteric or boring part, but a lot of analytics and data drives through the finance and accounting departments because that's where all the numbers are generated. So again, a very important dimension of hospitality analytics. Acquisition disposition analytics, of course, companies look at buying assets and selling assets. So understanding the accretive versus decremental dimensions of every asset is pretty critical. ROI and ROA are important, return on investment and return on assets, just two of many different metrics to use. Number 17 is competitive strategy. And competitive strategy here really relates to very long-term scenario-based analyses and decision-making. Now, one of the favorite models I use to teach this, to train, to consult with is Michael Porter's 5 Forces model, right? We don't have time to go through this, but it's a very good framework for understanding not just the present situation, but long-term objectives for a company, especially in the hospitality industry. Many, many books are written on this. And so I invite you to go seek that out. There's lots of books on strategy. And the counter to long-term strategy is short-term operational tactics. That's the day-to-day operating decisions. Okay, and that's obviously very important to understand as well, and with lots and lots of data that brings to bear on those decisions. Number 19 is transaction analysis. This is very detailed line item, dimension-oriented transaction analysis. Every single transaction and component recorded and cross-tabulated by every possible dimension. Now, what do I mean by that? I just kind of threw out a bunch of words there that most of you are thinking, what does that all mean? So I'll give you an illustration I like to show, which is really the job of anybody that's analyzing data. And this goes not just for hospitality, but every single industry and every single case in which you're looking at data and analytics. It's to understand the relationships, the how a variable or one or two variables relate with each other. That's almost the secret sauce of analytics. So let's just say we had 6 KPIs, which stands for key performance indicators. These are like your internal metrics like revenue and costs and occupancy and things of that nature. And then let's just say we have 6 external drivers. This could be job growth, it could be competitive annual daily rates. It could be a whole host of external metrics outside your company. So the job of someone who is looking at analytics or conducting analytics is to literally look at every single possible interrelationship. Okay. Now, what you might think is, okay, well, there's only 12 variables up there. So if you look at paired combinations, there's only 66. I can do that with a simple spreadsheet, I guess. And if I look at all combinations, right, there's a little over 4,000. Excel can probably still handle that. But in this day and age of machine learning and AI, if you look at every single permutation, there's well over 1.3 billion. So this demands big data analysis using much more sophisticated advanced programs than a spreadsheet. Finally, and I should say last, but certainly not least, perhaps even the prime goal is the guest experience maximization. And again, you would think, well, how do you do that with data? And of course, with everything I just mentioned, the aforementioned 19 dimensions, a lot of those are qualitative and can be brought to bear on some type of guest experience index score, if you will. And again, to track this, to talk to your guests, to use more qualitative methods is highly recommended, excuse me, in order to understand the guest experience and to maximize their experience. So there's a summary, excuse me, of all 20 of the types of hospitality analytics that we just went over. Looking at my time here, I'm at 18 minutes and 4 seconds, so pretty good. And just a couple of last slides here. There are many, many data and analytics tools. These are just 25 that are sort of in our wheelhouse. And I guess I should just allow me to ask one question to the audience here. You know, the correlation, is there a correlation between hospitality versus Maslow's hierarchy of needs? And so essentially here, if you look at Maslow's hierarchy of needs, it's a very insightful pyramid of needs, if you will, starting with food, water, shelter, and working your way all to the pinnacle of that experience of a guest's, say, activities where they feel some form of self-actualization in their stay. I would contend, you know, half jokingly, maybe 80% jokingly, that analytics should be a foundational piece below Maslow's. And then probably the most important part that everyone often forgets about is high-speed Wi-Fi. So I want to thank everyone that's joined the webinar. I'm sorry, and I apologize ahead of time for my rapidity in speech and the speed in which I went through those 20, but I wanted to make sure that I covered quite a bit of topics. And thank you from Newport Beach. And yeah, I was happy to present the growth of data science, analytics, and hospitality. If we have any questions, certainly we'll take them, or we could just, like I've mentioned, or I've heard in the previous chats, we could do that via chat.
Thank you so much for that, Mr. Savlowitz. And now we know about the 20 types of analytics in hospitality. Very good and interesting. And we have time for one question. So what do you say? Do we have one?
We have a question here from the chat, and it says, do you think we will be, sorry, let me take that again. Do you think we will actually have the prediction method still being the best in 20 years' time with the development that's happening around the world?
So predictive analytics is getting better and better. And what happened at SHMS in the fall here, I taught a class there, is that we experimented with a gamification of predictive analytics where most of the students, over 100, didn't have much experience with data and analytics at all. And we did a predictive analytics simulation and gamification where they made 16 predictions. And we have a live dashboard up online that shows what I was not prepared to see, a finding in which most of the students actually improved on their predictive analytics capabilities. It's a kind of an amazing finding. And so when you look at that, and then the question is, where are we going to be in 20 years? I can definitely tell you that we're going to evolve in our decision-making when it comes to the future. Now, that said, I'll add something that I just saw as an email 2 days ago. One of my colleagues sent me. One of the big international consulting companies was hawking a service in which they can automate their entire forecasting and predictive analytics functions for a company, where you just push a button and out comes a forecast. And I think this is foolhardy to think of. And I think even in 20 years, that's just not going to happen. Forecasting and predictive analytics is an art and a science. Okay, I should probably say a science and an art. And human intuition and human creativity is going to be foundational to the success and the evolution of how we evolve our forecasting. We're just not even close to just having a computer take over and make, every single nuanced future decision. So, but we are improving, and with a combination of human intuition and machine learning and AI, we're going to make great strides.
Thank you very much, sir. Thank you for your wise answers.